Hello again, everybody. It's DB Cooper Sleuth, Ryan Burns, and today I'll be looking at Brad Meltzer's Decoded. I'll be doing a reaction to this. This was a History Channel show from, I believe, 2011. It was if I remember, it was a Kenny Christiansen-centric sort of show, just like the National Geographic show from a few years earlier. It was also about Kenny Christiansen. So Kenny Christiansen was all the rage back in these times for being DB Cooper. But anyway, just a reminder, I'm going to be very pedantic with this stuff, and because of the subject matter, dealing with Kenny Christiansen, I might be a little snotty about it. So just bear with me. I will do my best. But without further ado, we will get started.
What if I were to tell you that of all of America's skyjackings, only one remains unsolved? On November 24th, 1971, a passenger using the name Dan Cooper hijacked Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305 headed from Portland to Seattle.
Wait a second. That was a flipped image, wasn't it? Wasn't that flipped?
1971, a passenger using the name...
Yeah, look at that. His hair part's on the right side. Eric Eulis would have liked that with Vince Peterson. Yeah, hair part on the right side. That's wrong. His hair part was on the left side. That's a flipped image. It's weird how an image can look so different when it's flipped, right? But yeah, that's his head's tilted the wrong way. But anyway, pedantic. But still, that's weird.
Dan Cooper hijacked Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305 headed from Portland to Seattle. After threatening to blow up the plane with a bomb, Cooper demanded 4 parachutes and $200,000. Fearing the worst, Northwest Airlines agreed. Once on the ground in Seattle, Cooper let the other passengers and some of the flight crew off the plane and had both the money and parachutes brought on board. The plane...
That money didn't have rubber bands on it. It needs to have rubber bands on it. So
refueled, took off again, and at 10,000 feet, Cooper jumped from the back stairs of the Boeing 727 into the Pacific Northwest night. He was never seen again. The press began calling the skyjacker DB Cooper, and the FBI investigated thousands of leads. Suspects included a mass murderer, a college professor, a career criminal, and a World War II veteran. But they were all ruled out as the culprit. In the last 40 years, new suspects have emerged, and now...
A college professor, I'm guessing, not sure who that would be. The mass murderer would be John List. Not sure who career criminal would be Dwayne Webber, no doubt. Well, there were lots of career criminals who were investigated as DB Cooper by the FBI. College professor. I wonder if they're thinking of Gossett. He was a ROTC instructor at a college, not a professor, though.
Now, we have an unexamined lead that may point to an inside job. We need to decode who he was and how he may have managed to pull off this unbelievable stunt without ever getting caught. Whatever the case, I can tell you one thing. When someone commits the perfect crime, I want to know who he is.
Well, you're not going to find it in this episode, Brad, because Kenny Christiansen was 100% not DB Cooper.
I'm Brad Meltzer. I've spent my life collecting stories. The best include signs, symbols, and codes, secret meanings that are hidden in plain sight. Some have become the basis for my novels, but I've only scratched the surface of what's out there. And now, history has given me the resources to investigate the rest.
At least he's not the Indiana Jones wannabe kind of guy, right? There's lots of those. I've done reactions to a couple of those guys now. They all kind of look the same. They all have these like brown leather jackets, brown hair, kind of beard scruff. This guy's like Mr. Mackey from South Park, so I do prefer his look over the Indiana Jones guys who are so typical of these DB Cooper documentaries.
This is Decoded.
You guys, just think about this for a minute. There's many suspects over the years, and this is like the oldest cold case, the only unsolved skyjacking in aviation history.
The problem is there's been like hundreds of people that have either claimed to be this guy, or they know this guy, or they were related to this guy, so I'm a little skeptical whether this is going to be the one.
Buddy, Mac, and Scott are chasing down leads that point to Kenny Christiansen, a former Northwest Airlines employee, being D.B. Cooper. Kenny was never really a suspect in the 1970s, but the book Into the Blast uncovered new evidence that points to Christiansen. And I was able to get the co-author, Robert Blevins, to agree to talk.
Robert.
You believe that Kenny Christiansen was D.B. Cooper, is that right?
Do not call him Bob. His name is Robert.
I would say 90 to 95% certain that he was. He worked for the airline. He had paratrooper training. He had the opportunity. He had a lot of unexplained spending within a few months after the hijacking. He lent his best friend's sister $5,000 in cash to buy a house. Then he used another $16,000 to buy another house for himself. As far as we can tell, Kenny Christiansen had one life before the hijacking and a completely different one afterwards.
Christiansen was making $512 a month. That's a month working for Northwest. So for him to suddenly have money to throw around was definitely suspicious. The FBI, though, ruled Christiansen out as a suspect for 3 reasons. 1, he didn't match eyewitness descriptions. 2, he wasn't a career criminal. And 3, they don't believe that the hijacker had military training.
Yeah, okay. That's all bogus. No. Okay, look, no, folks, no. The FBI did think that Cooper was not a career criminal. That's true. But no military service. That is, No. That was part of their. That was part of their whole investigative idea, was that he was military. And again, it's kind of dumb even. It's almost like a 21st century sort of mindset we have, where we're talking about military service like that. Like, everyone was in the military back then. It wasn't unique. I mean, most American men were in the military, especially Cooper's age, right? Cooper is in his 40s, basically. And if you're in your 40s in 1971, then you're born in the mid-20s or so. And what's happening 20 years later after that? But World War II. And then you have Korea after that. So, I mean, I think of the like 30, there's like, I can't remember I don't know how many named suspects we have that we talk about a lot, but I think only a couple of them that I'm aware of weren't in the military. So the FBI definitely did not ever rule somebody out because they had military experience. Kenny Christiansen is ruled out for many reasons. They're just logical. FBI agent Larry Carr said the only thing that Kenny Christiansen and D.B. Cooper had in common was male body parts, to be blunt about it.
The parachute rig that the hijacker chose.
The parachute that D.B. Cooper actually jumped with is called a Navy Backpack 6. And it's a smaller parachute, more of a military type. But a guy like Kenny Christiansen might pick that one over a big, newer sport parachute, especially a person who hadn't jumped in a while.
Because he would be familiar with how it worked.
That's right.
The fact that Kenny Christiansen was a paratrooper and obviously D.B. Cooper jumped out of a plane, what helps match that up? I mean, was there something specific about the training?
The skyjacker was a pretty tough guy, and so was Kenny. And Kenny went through paratrooper training where they started out with 262 men and ended up with 80 that actually finished, and he was one of them.
So you think Kenny did this and he survived the jump?
Yes, I think he jumped out of the back of that 727 and hit the ground, popped off his parachute, disconnected the harness and the container from it, buried the silk part, and put his briefcase and the money bag into the container for the parachute, put it on his back, and walked out of the woods. Another kind of crazy coincidence is this comic book here, made into a hardback book, but the...
Dan Cooper.
Dan Cooper is the name he used boarding the plane.
It's the name he put on his boarding pass. The FBI has that picture on their website and lists it as an official clue.
1, I love comic books. 2, I love comic books. And 3, you know what I love more than comic books? The possibility that the alias Dan Cooper actually comes from one. It's a way better alias than Clark Kent. Of course, I want to understand more about why the FBI ruled Christiansen out so quickly, but first, Buddy, Mac, and Scott are headed to see Kenny's brother, Lyle.
Okay, well, yeah, his brother's the one who brought all this up. Okay, his brother decided brother was watching, I guess, maybe the Unsolved Mysteries episode in the 90s, I guess, and decided that this must be his brother. I don't know what he got that from, but he first tried to. I believe he hired a private detective to get a letter to Nora Ephron, the director of like You've Got Mail, I think, and Sleepless in Seattle. Don't know why he thought that she would be a director for a D.B. Cooper story, but he did. Got no response. Lyle contacted the FBI. Didn't really get a lot of response out of them. Believe he sent a letter to Flo Schaffner, one of the stewardesses aboard the plane, and don't believe she ever. I think she sent it to the FBI actually, because I think it's in the FBI files, if I'm not mistaken. I'll have to look that up, but I think it is. But yeah, he tried to contact her and didn't get a lot of traction. And I'm not quite sure how it came about, but at some point in the mid 2000s, like 05, 06, something like that, he hooked up with some more people, including Skip Porteous. I think he'd already been with Skip Porteous, but somehow, I don't know. I wish I knew the story to tell you guys. Really, I'm not really sure, but eventually it got Jeffrey Gray, the author of Skyjack, got interested in it, and it kind of grew from there. But as far as the Dan Cooper comic goes, I am very agnostic on that. I am 50-50, right? It's intriguing that there is a Dan Cooper comic guy who jumps out of planes and things like that. Not a terrible idea for an alias. People get aliases from different things. As Darren Schaefer of the Cooper Vortex talks about, if this was a skateboarding crime and the alias was Tony Hawk, then it'd be pretty easy to connect the two. But Dan Cooper is a really, not a super common crazy name, but like it's common enough that you could just make it up. Other skyjackers used names like Robert Wilson or John Shane or whatever. They just used regular names. So Dan Cooper's not so far out, but it could have been the alias got from that or not. Like I said, I am totally agnostic. I could go either way. Don't really care. If a suspect had a compelling story that matched up with Dan Cooper comics, then that's good evidence, I guess.
Lyle cooperated with Robert Blevins when he was writing his book and provided him with access to some of his brother's personal effects. And now we're going to get to see them too.
We'd like to know more about your brother Kenny. How did you start putting this together?
Before he passed away, he told me on his deathbed, there's something you should know, but I cannot tell you.
So you kept that secret to yourself?
Yes, I kept it secret. I didn't want to know anything bad about him.
You know how they say don't believe everything you hear? There's only one exception to that, a deathbed confession. It is the only reason I'm so obsessed with this case. After his almost confession, Lyle decided he needed to
an almost confession, right? Doesn't count. Okay, doesn't count. That's not admissible. Objection. Not admissible. He could have been saying that could have been about anything. People have speculated. Okay, Kenny Christiansen was gay, and there was some thought that he wanted to mention about that or mention something to do with that. Kenny Christiansen was a sponsor of young like runaway boys at his house. May have just been a super nice guy, but I mean that doesn't look. It looks a little sketchy to some people, right? But then I think the apologists would say that the family already knew Kenny was gay, so he wouldn't have been confessing to that. But that's hearsay, right? So I don't know. But again, that's we are taking a giant leap that I have something to tell you, but I cannot tell you is I hijacked a plane 30 years ago or whatever. Whatever.
examine his brother's possessions way more carefully.
I can start from the beginning. This is Kenny When he's about the age of the skyjacking,
What kind of upbringing did you guys have? Were you wealthy? Were you a middle class?
middle class, growing up on the farm. And Kenny joined the Army right after high school, and he decided to go into the paratroopers because the pay was better and he'd make extra pay for jumps and everything else. They had to train him to land in trees or water, anything. They could land in anything.
You know, paratroopers got paid $50 a month more than the infantry back then, so that was an incentive to join up.
He was in the military for 2 years. Then he applied for a job with Northwest Airlines, and they shipped him to Shemya, Aleutian Islands.
The islands in Alaska?
Yeah,
Oh.
Americans had a Northwest Airlines
Right.
base there. He spent 5 years up there in that lonesome place. And then he applied to be a flight attendant. He took training for that, so then he got to be a flight attendant.
It was a Northwest Airlines flight that was hijacked.
Yes, and the skyjacker came on the airline with an attaché case. And I found this very same attaché case in Kenny's final effects.
This is your brother's?
That's my brother, Kenneth.
This could be the briefcase of D.B. Cooper.
It could be.
Not D.B. Cooper's briefcase. That's not. That is not believed. Cooper's briefcase was very dark leather and looked brand new. That thing looks plastic. I'm not sure about that. Yeah.
The descriptions of D.B. Cooper when he boarded the flight were all the same. He was wearing a black suit with a tie and carrying a briefcase. He was described as tall and dark-haired.
Yes, and Kenny was not tall. All right, but they're forgetting his trench coat. He had an overcoat on as well, not just a suit. And his suit was brown, by the way, dark brown, but and a black overcoat.
This is a composite sketch from the eyewitnesses
Yes.
on the airplane, and
And this is your brother.
That's my brother.
All right, look at this.
Oh man.
That's bizarre. Look at that.
I mean, the thing about Kenny is he's not he's not a terrible match except for he's bald, okay, and he's fair complected. Yeah, I admit you look at the Bing sketch and you can go, oh wow, it looks like Kenny, but you can do that with a lot of people. I mean, guys, there are a lot better suspects out there who match the Bing sketch. We call it the Bing sketch for those who don't know, because Max Gunther, an author, once said that sketch looks like looks like Bing Crosby in a fit of boredom or a seizure of boredom. But one thing Kenny's missing there is the weird lower lip. Look at that. So in all of the Cooper sketches and all the Cooper descriptions and all the times that the stewardesses told the FBI about Cooper and things like this, they mention all the time that Cooper had a strange lower lip. Something was weird with his lower lip. Got a protruding lower lip. They called it protruding, pouty, thick. He's got little bird lips, looks like to me. His nose isn't crazy huge, I guess, but look at that little sketch over there. It's got a little kind of a nose, doesn't it? So I don't know if his nose is right either, but again, the main thing is, well, look at his eyes. His eyes are light colored, and he's bald for one thing. The stewardesses were quite convinced that Cooper was not wearing a toupee. In fact, 2 of the stewardesses told the FBI that they wear wigs and they notice people who wear wigs, and especially men who wear hairpieces. Now, this is back in the day. Hairpieces were quite obvious. And also, a hairpiece is not going to give you a receding hairline or a potential bald spot. One of the stewardesses said Cooper was balding. Okay? Cooper's hair was pretty much like mine at this stage of my life. I am mid-40s, so I'm Cooper's age, I suppose. Cooper had sideburns, low ear level, kind of mine are a little lower than that, I guess, but maybe about right. But yeah, they said he had a receding hairline, kind of on both sides a little bit, and was balding. Now, we're not quite sure. The stewardess said balding, partially balding, I think she said, but we don't know if that means, like, balding can sometimes mean a term for just you're losing your hair, right? You're balding. Or it could mean you had a small bald spot, okay? Now, what toupee is going to give you a receding hairline? They call his hair thin, too. Thin receding, partially balding. The guy was suffering hair loss. What toupee is going to give you hair loss? That's kind of the opposite of it, isn't it? That's not, shoe lifts aren't supposed to make you look shorter. It just doesn't work like that. And Kenny doesn't look Mexican. Okay. I think our best witness, Flo Schaffner, 15 minutes after leaving Cooper's company, tells the FBI that she believed he was of Latin descent. We have another passenger saying looked Mexican. Swarthy was the term back then. Dark complected. I don't see anything looking Native American or Mexican with Kenny there. But that's just me.
I found this picture in his photo book. I must have looked at the photo book many times and never caught it. And one day I said, wait a minute. Carrying a bag, looks like a bag of money, and he's got the attaché case.
Based on what I read, that's exactly what D.B. Cooper had with him on the airplane.
The evidence needs to be looked at more closely, and Lyle has actually agreed to lend the briefcase to us for our investigation.
I have thoughts on that photo, and I'm guessing they'll get into it more later on. But my opinion on that photo is that either it's got nothing to do with Cooper, or it's some kind of gag photo. At CooperCon a few years ago, we met a stewardess who knew Kenny Christiansen. Okay, she was a interpreter at the Museum of Flight in Seattle. She was like a guest hostess or something, I don't know, but she had been a stewardess for her entire career for Northwest Airlines, and she knew Kenny. She also knew Tina Mucklow and all the other people, all the pilots who were involved in this case. Okay, so it wasn't a gigantic company. They knew each other, and that's another reason why the Kenny Christiansen thing is kind of dead on arrival for me, and I'll get into that later. But anyway, she told us something very interesting. I asked her, I said, well, did you know Kenny Christiansen? Just asking. She goes, oh, of course. She goes, we knew Kenny. And she said that it was a joke among Northwest Orient that Kenny was like the hijacker. Like they would joke with him about being Cooper because he was kind of mild and mannered. And yeah, you look at the sketch and if he had hair, there'll be some similarities kind of, but it was kind of the joke about him being Cooper. So it's possible. I think there's a possibility that picture, which was taken on a timer, by the way, it turns out, like that wasn't a photo that someone just took. So he set a camera up in his house and walked through the door. And part of my thinking is that this was Kenny having fun with the inside joke. Maybe I don't know, that's just my opinion on it, about it, that is. Although if that was an inside joke, he should have had sunglasses on to match. If you're going to be Cooper, you got to have sunglasses on. So I don't know about that picture. It's strange, but if you were a Kenny fan, you would say, oh, well, that means something, but I don't know.
All right, let's see what's we got in this thing.
Passport photo, the overlay.
Oh, yeah. Still fascinated by that.
Ah, look at that.
So this is basically the FBI wanted poster. No particular accent, possibly from the Midwest.
This man is described as followed. It's a bulletin from the FBI. In the 40s, 5'10" to 6 feet tall.
Kenny Christiansen stood 5 feet 8 inches tall and was almost completely bald, so the physical description doesn't match. But we all know that eyewitness accounts are fairly unreliable. They're dubious at best.
Okay, yeah, he's not wrong. Witness descriptions can be pretty dubious at times, right? That is well known that witness descriptions are bad. However, when you've got consensus among certain things, it kind of leads in a certain direction, okay? And with regard to height on Cooper, Kenny's 5'8", okay? We have 4 witnesses who saw Cooper standing, okay? The ticket agent who sold his ticket, he went as high as 5'11" for Cooper. The gate agent who took Cooper's ticket, the boarding gate agent at the boarding gate, and he'd already been eyeballing Cooper because he thought Cooper looked kind of weird. He said 6'1" plus for Cooper's height. Okay. The very first impression we have of Cooper on the airplane is the stewardess who he passed the note to, Flo Schaffner. She runs to the cockpit and she writes down 6'1" on a notepad. Okay. Tina Mucklow, who spent 5 hours with Cooper. Okay. She went as high as 6 feet tall. Now, Tina Mucklow is 5'8". Okay. Try to imagine mistaking someone who is your height for being 4 inches taller than you, right? I mean, for Kenny to be Cooper, she would have to mistake his height by 4 inches. I mean, take whatever like height you are, okay? Imagine coming face to face with somebody. I'm 6'1". Imagine coming face to face with someone who's also 6'1". I would never mistake them for being 6'5", right? I mean, that is preposterous. So we got 5'11", 6'1 plus, 6'1", 6 foot tall. Kenny's 5'8", okay? Now, we do have a couple witnesses who are passengers who never saw him standing, who went 5'9", okay? Or 5'10". But again, they never saw him standing, right? So, I mean, how do you really get an estimate of someone's height when they're standing, especially when Cooper himself was slouching the whole time? They talk about him slouching in his seat, slumping in his seat. So, I mean, you can't not, you have to trust the people who saw him standing if you're going to come up with some idea of how tall this guy was. And that 6 feet tall seems to be the consensus if you take 5'11", 6 foot, 6'1", 6'1 plus. Kenny's 5'8". That's death to me for a Cooper suspect. I mean, it's not impossible, but man, for everybody to be that far off in their height estimations just doesn't seem realistic. And that's one main reason why Kenny is just not a great Cooper suspect.
And the other thing we know, Lyle said that Kenny used to wear a toupee prior to the skyjacking, but he never wore it again after the skyjacking. Great circumstantial evidence for sure, but we need something that is far more concrete.
This is a mortgage.
June 26, 1972.
72.
So about 6 months, 7 months after the hijack, he's buying a house.
That's what's going on here.
We could just be looking at a very eccentric person who made some money on land.
Yes, we could. We absolutely
Who
could.
happens to have a Northwest Airlines
Who happened to be a
briefcase.
parachutist, who happened to know the terrain that he was
And an
jumping out of a
actor.
plane.
I look at all this stuff and I think, we got a jumper.
Here's the thing I still can't shake. If all this is true, what was his motive? Why would someone with a good job be angry enough to steal from his employer? Here's one darn tasty reason. According to Kenny's own letters, he was never able to earn a stable living at Northwest because of constant protracted labor disputes at his job. There were 8 strikes at Northwest Airlines between 1954 and 1971, and those strikes severely cut into Kenny's earning power. He was constantly having to take odd jobs like working in a hotel or digging ditches for friends just to make ends meet. That is not a euphemism. He was actually digging ditches. In the meantime, the $8 million jets that Kenny worked on sat unused on the ground. And make no mistake, he resented it. If we believe that Kenny was D.B. Cooper, then by 1971 he had simply had enough. And he decided to strike out at the airline and make them pay for making him struggle.
Okay, well, all right. So, okay, let's dive into this motive thing. And let's dive into why it is rather silly to hijack your own airline, okay? Now, again, as I said, this was a small airline. I mean, it wasn't gigantic, all right? It wasn't, but so people knew each other, okay? There was a real possibility that Kenny didn't know who was going to be on that plane that day. It's a good possibility that one of the stewardesses would have known Kenny Christiansen at the time. Like, Kenny, what are you doing, right? Not only that, so not only do you run the risk of being noticed by, if he was a flight attendant himself, okay? Not only do you run the risk of being recognized by any one of the 3 flight attendants on the plane, okay? But he continued to work for Northwest Airlines for another 20 years. Okay, so at any time in those 20 years or whatever, especially right after, he could have come across Tina Mucklow or Alice Hancock, okay? And in fact, Kenny worked the Far East route a lot. That was his main kind of route. And Tina Mucklow, who sat with Cooper for 5 hours, ended up working the Far East route throughout the 70s. Same as Kenny. So, like, that just doesn't make any sense, does it? Why would you rob your place of employment, essentially, and continue working there when you know that the people you robbed who saw your face might be there at any time, any day, just show up and like, oh my God, what if he continues working for the airline? What if 6 months later, Tina Mucklow goes, it's you, I mean, like, that's just an idiotic risk. Okay, that is another reason why Kenny Christiansen, to me, is completely dead on arrival as a suspect. Like, that is insane. Like, like I said, on the front end, they might know you already. Okay, and they're like, "What are you robbing us? What is this, a joke?" And then on the back end, you continue working there. So just, I mean, again, you're risking life in prison here. Be smarter than that if you're going to be Cooper. So that's just silly.
And that is evidence that can't be ignored.
All right, what do we got here?
Whoa.
Bank account statements.
1094.
Look at how much money he's got in the bank. $186,000.
$186,000.
Almost 200.
At the end of the day, what we have here is a ton of circumstantial evidence. None of Kenny's papers or effects point directly to him being D.B. Cooper, but when you stack them all together, you have to wonder, could it all be coincidence?
But if we're looking at this and thinking, okay, this is so obvious, this guy's D.B. Cooper, why isn't the FBI thinking the same thing?
That's exactly what I was thinking. In fact, I think we need to talk to the FBI.
But would the FBI talk to us?
The FBI declined to appear on camera despite our request.
Oh, but I know an FBI agent who would talk to you for a fee. You give him $2,500 and he'll talk to you. And I think that's who they talk to.
Yes. They told us that the D.B. Cooper case was never solved, and as a result, it's still an open investigation. We did, however, get something even better. We managed to track down the original lead FBI agent in the case, and he's agreed to meet with Buddy Mack and Scott. So far, we know that Kenny Christiansen had the access and the motive, and that shortly after the skyjacking, he came into a pile of money. I can feel it. We're getting closer. The case of D.B. Cooper has captured our imagination for 4 decades. But after investigating thousands of leads, the case remains unsolved and open. Many now believe it was an inside job that was pulled off by an airline employee who had motive, access, and suddenly started throwing money around after the crime. His name is Kenny Christiansen, and Buddy Mack and Scott are headed to talk to Ralph Himmelsbach, a retired FBI agent who was actually in charge of the Cooper investigation from 1971 to 1980.
Oh, boy. Okay. Ralph Himmelsbach, a complicated character.
Ralph.
Was never the lead agent on the Cooper investigation, okay? That is what he would like for you to believe, okay? But no. Ralph Himmelsbach worked out of the Portland FBI office. This was a Seattle case. Norjack was the name of the case, which incidentally, Ralph did call it. That does come from Ralph Himmelsbach, the name Norjack, so you give him credit for that. But he was not that was a Seattle case, okay? So Seattle agents, that was their case. He was not the lead agent ever for D.B. Cooper, okay? He did write a book about it with the help of a ghostwriter called Norjack. I have met his grandson. I have had the opportunity to go through all of Ralph Himmelsbach's papers from the Cooper case, which is pretty cool. I appreciate his grandson doing that. I found out that Ralph Himmelsbach had a Norjack car tag, which if you don't know what Norjack means, Northwest hijack, okay? And cool car tag, I guess. But no, Ralph, I think, embellished his role as the Cooper guy, okay? He was he liked the media attention, I think. Okay. And so no, he was never the lead case agent. That's not to diminish his role, but now if a lead did come into Portland office, he would take the lead on Cooper. Okay. But he would kick it up to Seattle though. All right. So he was always subservient to the Seattle office of the FBI. He was never the lead case agent.
So, Ralph, we understand that you were the lead FBI agent investigating the D.B. Cooper case.
That's right. Ralph.
What was it like on the ground when you guys started working?
It was storming with cloudburst and gusty wind changing direction and so forth.
So you guys are running around on the tarmac yelling at each other?
And we're getting soaked wet all the time you're outside.
Just excellent jumping weather.
Not very good for jumping.
Probably a pretty miserable night to fly anything.
Yes, it was. There's an airliner here of the same kind, a Boeing 727. We can go aboard if you'd like.
The Boeing 727 was the most widely used aircraft for domestic air travel at the time of the skyjacking. They stopped being mass-produced in 1984, but with more than 1,800 made, they're now the staple of every air museum in the country.
Does this bring back memories of that day?
It does indeed, and I've thought about it 100 times, and it's still a mystery.
What seat was D.B. Cooper in, Ralph?
18C, this one right here. The boarding had taken place.
Good heavens. Oh, no. Oh, no.
Ralph.
Lead case agent. 18C. Granted, Ralph was very old at the time, but no. No. 18E. 18E. 18C is an aisle seat.
When the FBI approached the head of the airline and asked him how they wanted to handle it, they said right away they didn't want anything to happen, any property damage or any people injured,
Right.
and they'd pay the money.
Was Kenny Christiansen ever a suspect in this case?
He never came to my attention at all.
Think Dan Cooper had any military experience?
I kind of doubted.
Do you think that jump was survivable and he survived it?
I can't say that it wasn't survivable, but it's unlikely. That airliner was going 170 knots at 10,000 feet. Outside air temperature 7 degrees below zero. Chill factor.
All right. Well, that's Celsius, kids. That's -7 Celsius. Okay, it was actually, I believe, 22 degrees at that altitude, which is cold, but it is not -7. Okay, that is Celsius. Now that sounds, you can see her. Ooh, my God! But no, Ralph's cheating there, Ralph. Ralph, as I said, Ralph has a complicated history with D.B. Cooper. Ralph, I think, hates that. I mean, look, I get it. I mean, Cooper was a villain, folks. Let's not forget that, right? I mean, this guy was not a good person at all. Okay, try to imagine yourself, threatening to blow a plane up. Okay, passing a note to a young woman and saying, "I'm going to kill you if you don't do this." Just not a great guy. And so Ralph didn't like the Robin Hood thing that came about in the years after Cooper, right? That this guy was a Robin Hood character, which is weird because Robin Hood gives money to people, but Cooper didn't give him money to him. Well, he did offer the stewardesses money, that's for sure. But he just didn't like the maybe hero worship or counterculture icon that Cooper became. So Ralph really did not like D.B. Cooper, and I will play a reel here from a previous video of mine showing some of Ralph's greatest hits. So now you get it. Ralph, not a fan of D.B. Cooper. Now, about the survivability of Cooper's jump, talk to any actual skydiver and they'll be like, well, yeah, it's survivable. I mean, very, very, very few of them would ever say it's not survivable. I mean, again, it was not a raging thunderstorm outside. The 727 stairs provide a really nice, stable platform to jump off of. It's funny, Boeing came out like the next day, and J. Edgar Hoover got really pissed off at this, the director of the FBI, because Boeing came out and was like, yeah, actually, that's a really good plane to jump from. You just go straight down. The engines, you don't have to worry about the engines. And Hoover's like, shut this guy up. You're going to encourage copycats. And sure enough, he did. But all the other guys who did this same crime, and people forget that 5 other guys jumped out after Cooper with ransom tied to their bodies and did the same crime. All of them made it to the ground not dead. Okay, a couple of them were injured. And Cooper certainly could have been injured that night, no doubt about it. I mean, he was jumping at night, not going to see the ground very well. Dangerous to jump at night. We don't know where you're landing. Terrifying, really. But right, nothing has ever been found in the drop zone. The money is found 10 miles away from where the plane ever was. Okay, we know where the plane was flying. We have the radar of the flight. It was being pinged by the Air Force every 5 seconds. So we know exactly where the plane was. And the only thing that's ever been found from the hijacking is some of the money washed up on the Columbia River 10 miles away from where the plane ever was. And Cooper jumped 20 miles north of the Columbia River, so it's not like he landed in the Columbia River that night. So, you know, Cooper almost certainly survived this jump. Okay, parachutes work. And the parachute that he jumped with, an MB6, which is an exact replica right there, or it's not a replica, it's an original, I guess, but they are purposely designed to be worn and pulled by people who have never jumped out of a plane before. Okay, they are for air crew who are shot down and are having to jump out of a death spiraling flaming aircraft. Okay, jumping for your lives. I mean, it is a life preserver essentially. Not a comfortable parachute. Okay, when it opens up, but airbags aren't comfortable either, but they're gonna work. Okay, and parachutes work. So Cooper almost certainly lived, regardless of the freezing temperature. He's only going to be in the freezing temperature very briefly as he's going down. It's 22 degrees. I know the wind chill is going to be bad because you're jumping out out of a jet, but other guys did it and they didn't freeze. Okay, and they were wearing less clothing than Cooper, some of them. So the danger is overstated of the Cooper hijacking. And Ralph certainly is overstating the danger.
Of about 69 degrees below zero.
Brutal.
Why do you think his body has never been found if he died in the jump?
The best explanation I can give you of that is just go look at those woods.
D.B. Cooper was a smart guy. He made very specific demands of the flight crew. First, Cooper asked the pilot to stay below 10,000 feet because any higher, they'd have to pressurize the cabin, making it harder for DB to open the stairs and escape. Next, he wanted the flaps, you know those things on the wings that go up and down at takeoff and landing? He wanted those set at 15 degrees exactly. At that angle, the 727 couldn't fly any faster than 200 miles per hour, making it safer for DB to jump out. However you slice it, this guy knew what he was doing. He knew about planes and he knew how they worked, and he certainly used that knowledge to his advantage.
If you come down here, I'll show you the door and where he was last seen.
Oh.
Can you imagine the air come flying?
Look at. If you were right about here, you're going to start seeing, and then you'd have to go like.
When you did that, it even bounced.
He's below zero. Oh my God, I can't even.
This is like standing at the top of the high dive.
This thing's bouncing around.
It's amazing to think of that guy on these steps at 200 miles per hour. The guy's going to be up here, and there's not going to be quite as much vacuum pressure. And also, the door wouldn't have been this far down. It kept coming back up, apparently, and then with his weight, it would have been tighter, like that.
That's right.
I think this guy had been out of a plane before.
Maybe.
Yeah, and I mean, that is pretty intimidating. And it is funny that you see these guys, that guy was doing a Geronimo jump off that thing, and we like to think maybe Cooper did that, but we don't know. We know that other guys who did this crime kind of sat on their butt going down the stairs because they didn't want to fall out of the stairs, so they were going scooching down on their butts. One hijacker went down backwards, backwards down the stairs. So we have this maybe image of Cooper Geronimoing off this thing, Geronimo, and smoke, tossing his last cigarette and then jumping, being all brave and stuff. But I think Cooper was he's a human being, right? So that would be intimidating to go out the aft stairs of a plane out of a jet. With all this money strapped to you. So whoever he was, it doesn't matter who he was, it would have been intimidating for sure. But again, other people did this, and Several of them had never jumped out of a plane before, and they survived just fine. So not some impossible feat at all.
Maybe military experience, but I don't know if he had experience with this plane opening this door.
Whoever it was, by sitting in that seat where he sat, by having this, all of the...
Okay, here's another problem. Okay, here's another Kenny Christiansen problem, okay? The one thing Cooper really didn't seem to know about, according to the stewardess, was how to open the door, the rear door, and how to open, well, not open the rear door, but lower the stairs, actually. The rear door, the bulkhead door was actually open at takeoff, but the stairs were up. But he wasn't quite sure about lowering the stairs, so he had to have her help. She had to show him how to do it. Kenny Christiansen's a flight attendant. I don't know what planes he flew on, but at some point he would have flown on a 727. And again, this is part of his job. And of course, an apologist will say, oh, well, he was trying to throw him off the scent I'm sure that's what Robert Blevins would probably say, or people who say, listen, he was just faking it maybe. But Cooper seemed a little nervous about the stairs. All right. And didn't really seem to know how to operate them properly, how to lower them, which is weird because it is just a lever. But he was nervous about it. And Kenny should have known how to lower the aft stairs of a 727.
Directions for where to put the flaps and the speed. And the guy knew what the hell he was doing.
The FBI thinks that Cooper did not survive.
Not
and
true.
Robert Blevins thinks that he did. So
that's another thing I'll point out, too, is that they're taking Himmelsbach's word that Cooper probably died. Of the FBI agents that I know of, only, and Himmelsbach always said 50-50. He's being a little more negative here in his old age, but he always said 50-50, which was low too low in my opinion. Larry Carr, who is a friend of mine, I respect immensely, was the actual lead agent on this case for many years. He thinks Cooper died, but he's in the minority with the FBI. The FBI, the head of the Seattle office at the time, J. Earl Milne, said years later, he was like, oh yeah, he probably slept in his own bed that night. Okay. John Detler, another one of the original case agents from 71, a friend of mine as well, firm believer Cooper survived. The FBI, in fact, there are FBI documents that are like, we have no reason to think he died that night. So we don't think he died. I mean, now, granted, when they would talk to the media, they like to talk about how dangerous it was and yada, yada, yada. But that's almost kind of a like, don't do drugs, kids sort of thing. I mean, what are they supposed to do? Well, yeah, he got out. He lived. No, that's just going to encourage copycats. So that they had an incentive to kind of, at least with the media, make it seem more negative than it really was.
So where do we go from here?
Well, the FBI further doesn't think that it was a Northwest employee. Thinks that he would have been recognized if he was.
Buddy Mack and Scott are chasing down leads that now point to former Northwest Airlines employee Kenny Christiansen as the most likely culprit.
The guy I talked to, Larry Yount, he's a former paratrooper. He's a skydiving instructor. When I said, if you were going to jump out of a 727, how would you do it? And he said, the way this guy, D.B. Cooper, did it. Absolutely dangerous, but absolutely survivable.
I buy that someone could have survived the jump, but Lyle says that Kenny continued to work for Northwest Airlines for 20 years after the heist. That's a lot harder for me to believe. He hangs out basically at the scene of the crime for years afterwards.
Thank you, lady.
That makes it hard for me to believe it's Kenny Christiansen.
In addition to that, we also have his brother telling us that he drank bourbon. The guy ordered a bourbon on the plane. Right. The demeanor of the hijacker was strikingly similar to his brother.
There was a strong physical resemblance.
Darker skin. He had a receding hairline.
The other thing is...
receding is bald.
Didn't have very much money prior to the hijacking.
That's huge.
And he began to spend a great deal of money in the months following the hijacking. So far, more pros than cons.
I think we should follow this money trail. I mean, we do know that he paid cash for a house.
Not
He's
true.
been giving money away.
All right, so...
This is a picture of...
That's been disputed now. I mean, he had a mortgage on this place. He did not pay cash. Okay, that was a assertion that I believe was in Jeffrey Gray's Skyjack book, which is not true. It's probably also in Into the Blast as well, but he did not pay cash for a house. Okay, that would be quite juicy if he did a few months after the skyjacking, but no, he did not.
Of the house that he paid cash for.
If anything was left.
But I'm not going to beat up a suspect who has a mortgage, though, because I mean you don't want to draw attention to yourself, right? So I don't blame him on that.
Here, how would we go about finding hidden money in a
That's a
house?
good question.
It's buried in the walls. You use infrared to find like leaks around doors and windows, so maybe that would help. You could tell temperature differences.
There seems to be a lot of evidence piling up against Kenny Christiansen. But the next logical place to look has got to be the house he bought in Washington State after the skyjacking. The residence has been converted to a print shop, but the structure remains the same.
Looks like there's probably a lot more stuff here now than there was back then.
This looks it. We want to see where Kenny lived, so we're headed to his old house in Bonnie Lake.
It looks like you got a business going here now, but it was a house until when?
The business was probably 10, 12 years ago when it was sold to somebody else, and it's been a commercial location ever since.
The story is obviously D.B. Cooper left the plane with a lot of $20 bills. Have you found any?
I haven't, but people have found money on the property. When the owner I bought it from bulldozed all the trees around here, unknowingly unearthed some kind of a clear plastic bag, they said, that was ripped open from being dragged through the stumps probably. And the kids were playing in the stumps playing fort, and they found a bag and it had money in it.
D.B. Cooper made his ransom request. He asked for $200,000 in unmarked $20 bills. The ransom was divided into 100 bundles worth $2,000 each. Altogether, it weighed about 21 pounds. But before the FBI had the ransom delivered, they ran the bills, all 10,000 of them, through a machine.
Actually, it was in, we believe actually it was most likely in 20 bundles, if my math is right on that. Cooper's money, according to the man who carried it in his lap from the bank, a guy named Bill Grinnell, to the airport, the money was in 5 packet bundles. So a packet of $2,000 of 20s, so 120s in a packet. 5 of these were bundled together with rubber bands, okay? So there are actually, I guess, 20 bundles of these. Not 100 bundles, packets, whatever he said.
Called a Recordac that created a microfilm photograph of each bill and a record of all the serial numbers. In December 1971, just a few weeks after the skyjacking, the FBI published the serial numbers of the D.B. Cooper ransom money. 34 pages of serial numbers, but nothing ever turned up. Until February 1980, when an 8-year-old boy, the luckiest kid in the world, found a bundle of decomposing $20 bills on the banks of the Columbia River near Vancouver.
It's actually $6,000 we know now. $5,800 was the long-standing idea, but it's believed now, in the past, 10 years or so, that it's more likely to be all $6,000 of 3 packets. Now, why there were 3 packets together, not 5, is a mystery. We don't know. I guess it's possible. I mean, but the guy at the bank, I mean, it makes sense. You're going to make 5 packet bundles of $10,000. You get 20 of them, and that's done, easy. 3 doesn't really divide into 200,000. So, or $6,000 does not divide into $200,000. So, but yeah, there were 3 packets found, okay, with rubber banded, not 5 packets of 20. So, and it was $6,000, not $5,800. But yeah.
Washington, some 40 miles from the alleged D.B. Cooper drop zone. The $5,800 matched the FBI's serial numbers. As far as we know, this is the one and only time that any of the D.B. Cooper money has been found. In 2008, the 8-year-old, now a grown man in his 30s, put some of the D.B. Cooper money up for auction in a Dallas auction house. And here's the kicker. The bidding for the most complete bill started at $750. But here's where it ended up, $6,572.50. And that is how you put a price on a piece of American history.
Are there any areas you haven't searched that he could use this? We're bringing in an infrared specialist to scan the house, and the first place we're going to check is the back of the shop where Kenny's bedroom used to be.
So Kevin, what exactly is this thing doing?
Thermal imaging of the walls and the ceilings, the temperature differences. So anything is more insulation, as you can see in that one corner, it's redder, there's more insulation.
So if there's an empty pocket in the wall or something
Right.
different like money than insulation, you'll see it.
Right. I'd like to shoot the ceiling. I don't know if we can or not. I kind of have to get down here and
Go
see.
for it.
Yeah.
You know, you can see that was real hot there. That's where the conduit is.
Right.
And then back over in this neck of the woods. And then there's a spot right up here. See the blue change right there? And
Yeah. Is it less insulating? So could that be an empty pocket?
It could be an empty pocket. It could be something up there that's pushing down and the insulation is not as thick. There's something different in this little area right here than there is there or over here or over there.
And you thought we were crazy for devoting a whole episode to D.B. Cooper. Let me tell you how this played out. When we were filming, I was on the phone, and the show's director tells me we probably won't find anything. And I think to myself, we probably won't find anything. And then he calls back and says, Brad, I think we found something. We're in Washington State investigating Kenny Christiansen, a former Northwest Airlines employee who may have actually pulled off the infamous D.B. Cooper skyjacking in November 1971. So go with me on this. If Kenny was D.B. Cooper, he had to be really careful about when and how he spent his ransom money. So it makes perfect sense to me that he might have stashed some of the money in his house or in the woods behind the house. He wasn't going to deposit it all in a bank without attracting unwanted attention. So the question is, where did he put it?
So
that's
this is the
where I'm
spot.
going.
That's the spot we saw on the infrared fluke.
Yeah, it was.
Remember, if you find money, there's no holding out on us.
I'm not telling anybody if I find money in here. All right, there's a lot of insulation, and in the area where we saw the infrared, definitely is some stuff pushed aside. Really? Let me try to get it closer. Hang on.
How'd that camera get in there before he did?
How's it going?
It's good. Right where we saw the infrared, it looks like something was there. I'm going to try to move some of it around a little more. I don't see any money, but let me try to get in here further. Whoa. Hey, guys.
Yeah?
Yeah?
This is interesting.
I want to get in there and see.
Yeah, it's hard to describe, but it's like you can lift up the flooring. Yeah, oh my God.
You want some gloves, dude.
Wow. Holy cow. There is I just lifted up a piece of the floor and there is a little space down here where something absolutely could have been. It's almost like it's a little hiding space. And it's actually right above the bedroom.
That's right.
Where Kenny Christiansen slept.
Yeah,
I will
this is
keep
the
my
bedroom.
thoughts to myself.
Even though there's nothing here now, it would have been an excellent hiding place for money.
Wow.
Kenny.
And other things, perhaps.
People make alterations to their homes for all sorts of reasons. It seems strange that Kenny would have built this unless he was trying to hide something.
That's a hiding spot. We found a hiding spot. And unless you have secret trapdoors above your bedroom, there certainly doesn't seem to be anything accidental about this. So far, we've determined that Kenny had both the motive and the means to commit the crime. And in checking out the house he used to live in, we found a suspicious hiding place, a hinged cubbyhole in the ceiling above his bedroom. Looking at this, I do think Kenny Christiansen was D.B. Cooper. He had both the motive and the means to pull off the skyjacking, and everyone in this guy's circle seems to think he could have done it too. Based on the evidence that we uncovered, we know why.
Hey, that's a different briefcase, though. Look at that. That's a different briefcase. So not the same briefcase, but whatever.
Kenny did it, how he did it, even how he spent his ransom money. It all makes sense to me. And though most people consider the D.B. Cooper skyjacking to have been a victimless crime, it wasn't. Ask the FBI and Northwest Airlines. Some say no one was hurt by what he did, that he's some kind of modern-day Robin Hood. That's why D.B. Cooper has become a folk hero. There were songs written about this guy, movies made about him. There's even a bar that celebrates the anniversary of the heist with a D.B. Cooper look-alike contest. Let's be clear, that may make you a celebrity, but that doesn't make you a hero. In all likelihood, Kenny Christiansen, a humble airline employee, committed the perfect crime. He got what he wanted, and most important, he got away with it.
God almighty, that flipped Cooper photo is just annoying as hell. Okay. All right, so, yeah, I skipped over some parts of that. It's kind of long, so sorry about that. I'll put a link below for the whole thing if you want to see the whole thing. But yeah, that's again, Kenny Christiansen is just not a good suspect in my opinion. There's nothing about this guy that would make anyone think he looks Mexican or Hispanic or Native American. 5'8" is just, again, I don't know how everyone who saw him standing went 5'11", 6 foot, 6'1", 6'1" plus for someone who's 5'8". Again, we are all humans. We understand height, especially when you see someone standing. You can kind of get an idea, at least, if they're 5'8" or 6 feet tall. That's a huge difference. Okay, being bald. Okay, the toupee thing. Cooper had thinning hair like me, thinning, receding hair with maybe a bald spot. I don't know any toupees that give you a receding hairline. Okay, the guy continues to work at the airline. I mean, it's okay. The airline might have been, Bruce Kitt there from the museum says it's possible that he wouldn't have been recognized. But again, he keeps working there for 20 years, and Tina Mucklow would have certainly. That is one question that you want to ask Tina Mucklow, is just for the hell of it, say, did you know Kenny Christiansen? I would almost bet she did. But anyway, so that was, again, these things kind of come in phases, right? For a while, Kenny was the hot shit, right? Kenny was the big dog of the Cooper world. And then people just started, I guess, thinking logically about it. And he goes away as a suspect. And then McCoy has had a resurgence thanks to Dan Greider's phony parachute that he found. I have several videos on that. You can look that up. So who knows who the next Cooper suspect du jour will be. We will find out. But anyway, if you've hung in there and you have not subscribed, for God's sake, subscribe and give it a like and give it a comment too. The comments really help the algorithm, even if you're like, you suck, you lose more hair, balding man. Whatever you want to say to me, do leave a comment. It helps the algorithm to get this out there more. So yada, yada. All right, folks, that's all I've got for today. So do like and subscribe and all that YouTubey stuff. And I will talk to you guys again soon. Bye.